2, 1.
Namaste. Welcome to another fireside conversation with Vichar Manthan. Here we bring in leading experts in various fields to earnestly explore ideas and to do so through a dharmic lens. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar, Vichar and Manthan are Sanskrit words, which literally translate to thought and churning, respectively. Now, this is rather apt because it links heavily to today's topic. Is Sanskrit literature relevant to modern Britain? Today, we have Professor Diwakar Acharya joining us to help manthan this topic. Namaste, Diwakarji.
Namaste. Thank you for inviting me. I am looking forward.
Great to have you here, Diwakarji. So now, Diwakarji is originally from Nepal. He's currently based in the UK, and he's the Spalding Chair of Eastern Religion and Ethics at the All Souls College, which is part of the University of Oxford. Diwakarji took on this very important post in 2016, having worked previously at several institutions, including the Nepal Sanskrit University, also the University of Hamburg, and most recently at Kyoto University in Japan. He is editor-in-chief of the Journal of Indian Philosophy, and he's been exploring the religious and philosophical traditions of South Asia for many, many years. Primary to his work has been the exploration and interrogation of Sanskrit literature. Now, Diwakarji, for the audience, before we introduce the topic, would you be able to tell us in one or two sentences what is the significance of the Spalding Chair?
Yeah, Spalding Chair is one of the two Sanskrit-related chairs at University of Oxford, and it has some extra significance that the first professor who was occupying this chair was Professor Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan, who later became first vice president and then president of Republic of India. So that's why many people know this chair also because of that connection. Otherwise, the other professors who were Spalding professor before me, they were equally highlighted, equally important, like Professor Bimal Krishna Matilal, a great philosopher, Professor Alexis Sanderson, who somehow vitalized the field of the study of Tantra, and also JNR in between.
That's fascinating, Diwakarji, and we're very fortunate to have you here today. So today, Diwakarji is here to explore the topic of Sanskrit literature. Now, many of you will be familiar with Sanskrit as one of the most ancient languages in the Indian subcontinent. Many of the Indic languages that are spoken by us in the UK, including Hindi, Gujarati, Punjabi, etc., have taken great influence from Sanskrit. However, for many of us, we're largely disconnected with the language, and in some instances, being deemed maybe a dead language. To be honest, many individuals in the UK have probably only really engaged with Sanskrit during the rituals of their wedding ceremony. Whilst our familiarity with Sanskrit literature may be a little better, having knowledge of texts like the Vedas, the Upanishads, and the Bhagavad Gita, it is interesting that Sanskrit has been the primary language for intellectual and philosophical discourse in India for thousands of years. And we still have texts preserved in Sanskrit, despite it not being a commonly spoken language. Diwakarji, in the way of your opening remarks, can we start by exploring why this is the case? Why Sanskrit?
Thank you, Arunji. let me start first Sanskrit as language. Now, later, I will probably elaborate on Sanskrit as medium and vehicle of culture and intellectual tradition. So, first of all, as language, Sanskrit uh, is language of languages. It's a kind of meta language. No? So, in modern way, you can say that to handle other programming languages, you need to know C++, like that. No? So, if you have to deal with ancient as well as modern languages, Indian Sanskritic languages, as well as other uh, modern languages, you have to know Sanskrit now for the sake of comparative and better understanding of them. Yeah, so like we can compare there, like in China, they talk about ancient Chinese and then modern medieval Chinese and modern Chinese. So all are called Chinese. But in India, in South Asian context, we say Sanskrit, and then all other languages we have different names. But in essence, Nepali, Hindi, Gujarati, their vocabulary, so their treasure of words, that is in Sanskrit. So that's why even to know your mother tongue in a good way, in the right way, or to develop literature as well as grammar of your mother tongues, you have to go back to Sanskrit. The same way, to understand even Greek and Latin, because Sanskrit is older, or at least in the same level in this family of Indo-European and Indo-Aryan languages. So knowledge of Sanskrit is needed even to understand European classical languages, one way or the other way. So that way it is language of languages. On the other hand, Sanskrit is not just a language. It is a corpus of all kinds of texts of various knowledge systems. So as I earlier said, Sanskrit is medium and vehicle of education as well as intellectual engagement. In India, until the arrival of modern education, so it can be until arrival of Britishers. Uh, Before that, there were other arrivals, like Mughals were the Greeks were the but Sanskrit culture incorporated, received all of them, translated, and then reconciled, and in conjunction with new knowledge, they developed it. So it was the vehicle and medium. So that's why Sanskrit is very important from that point of view also. And further, Sanskrit is also a culture, Sanskrit as culture. So it serves as a bridge between North and South. Like in India, let's say when Britishers were leaving, there were 547 or something, 500 plus riyasats were there. There were different kingdoms, different localities, different regional interests. But what was uniting all of India? Yeah, no, I mean, in ancient time as well as in modern time, how one India is possible. That is because of Sanskrit as culture. So it's not only, don't think of only Hinduism. So there is Buddhism, there is Jainism. So all these religions, they are connected, they are now supported by Sanskrit culture. All different languages, all different local interests, regional interests, they are connected by Sanskrit. How you and me, we are connected. I mean, politically, I am Nepali. My nationality is different, but still we are brothers because of Sanskrit culture. And coming to modern times, Sanskrit is also the tool or vehicle that is needed for the understanding of complexities of modernization or modernity in India, to understand Indian worldview, Indian mindset. So Sanskrit is important. So in India, knowingly or unknowingly, many modern ideas, they are adjusted or reconciled with existing traditional ideas. Now, even the concept of, like, let's say, freedom, democracy, probably it is not exactly the way it is understood in Europe. There is some adjustment. So for all these reasons, we need Sanskrit. We need to engage with Sanskrit material, Sanskrit culture, Sanskrit corpus rigorously and more, I would say, multidimensionally, no, multidisciplinarily.
That's fascinating, Divakarji. So would you say here that so Sanskrit was the key to the culture of the wider India?
Yeah, definitely. So that it's a foundation as well as key. As I said, what is keeping India one, India united? No? So India as a multicultural unity. That is because of Sanskritic culture, I would say.
Interesting. So was Sanskrit ever really spoken on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, definitely. So long time back, that logically you can easily imagine, like we have so many languages, all are developing from that one Sanskrit language. So it's historically, if we go back, probably in the second millennium when the Vedic Samhitas were composed, Brahmanas and Upanishads were composed, probably that time Sanskrit was, or even earlier than that, Sanskrit once was the language of common people. But when these texts were composed, we can in a way say that there was probably vulgar Vedic language as well as standard Vedic language. Like we talk about vulgar Latin, and from vulgar Latin, Italian is developed. The same way, already probably in Vedic period, there was probably the language of masses. From that, gradually there was development of Pali, Prakrit, Apabhramsa, these other languages. So we have some symptoms already in Vedic corpus. But what is the in the book, in Vedas, in Upanishads, in Brahmanas, these are already a little bit elitistic. These are a little bit formalized, probably. Uh, but Sanskrit once was language of common people. But wait, yeah, I would say it is still spoken. No? So it is still yeah, yeah, by certain people.
But it's
So
not as
that,
popular now.
sorry.
It's not as popular now.
Yeah,
So
not
so
as
why?
popular as in the past, or as natural as in the past. But as I said, when people say that the Chinese, like they are encompassing from ancient to modern, the same way in diglossia, in the different incarnation, you are speaking Sanskrit, as Gujarati, Sanskrit as Hindi. So basically, probably 60%, 70% is Sanskrit, without knowing that they are speaking Sanskrit that way.
Interesting. So it's almost as if we've just this modern adaptation is a natural phenomenon.
Yeah, natural phenomena and gradually developed. But the ancient language, the beauty of Sanskrit is that its older form also is there, still spoken, still people are composing. Even in Oxford, no, we have our friend Suhas Mahesh who writes fantastic poems in Sanskrit and Prakrit.
Beautiful. So why don't we move on to Sanskrit literature? So what is Sanskrit literature, and what did it encompass? Could you give us a whistle stop tour of Sanskrit literature?
Yeah, as somehow earlier I hinted, Sanskrit corpus contains all of that. So what cultural India, not just political present day India, larger, starting from maybe South Asia, Southeast Asia, and to some extent even Far East. So all of that cultural India produced before the arrival of modern education in the subcontinent, all that is a Sanskrit corpus. So there, everybody knows religio-cultural, religio-philosophical corpus. No? Like we have Vedas, we have epics, we have Puranas, we have ritual texts, we have tantras, agamas of different
Because I
traditions
think
like
that
Saivism, Vaishnavism, and so on. But there is also, we can say that we have sacred as well as profane. We have religious as well as secular. Or in old way, we can say that we have text related to dharma and moksha, as well as we have text related to artha and kama, worldly success and pleasure. So like as you said, with brief tour, I can say, as I already said, we have religio-philosophical text. Then beyond that, we have more analytical, scholastic philosophies, with different worldviews, ethics, we have dharmasastras, law, and for the sake of management of society, we have logic, we have dialectics, how to have debates. The same way we have spiritual sciences such as yoga, with its psychological as well as cognitive aspect. Then we have very much developed linguistic sciences, hermeneutical sciences like grammar, syntax, and then also we have its relation with other languages like Pali and Prakrit. So somehow, actually, Prakrit grammar or Pali grammar that starts with grammar written in Sanskrit. So they compare Pali and Prakrit with Sanskrit, and then via Sanskrit they understand Pali and Prakrit. So the
Right.
same way we have fully developed literature. We have epics, poems, court poems. We have dramas. We have aesthetics. We have poetics. We have now Sanskrit composition. So education for poets. And now also we have spoken Sanskrit is there even. And then we have also fine and performing arts, like dramaturgy. We have music, we have songs, we have writing systems, in a way you can call it calligraphy. We have works on sculpting, painting. Then we also have a lot of historical documents, like from different periods. We have inscriptions in Sanskrit, and some of them are wonderful poems. So they have poetic literary value also. The same way we have regional mahatmyas, like local histories, and also like you probably have heard the Raja Tarangini of Kallhana, like chronicles in different period and different places they were written. The same way we have also other practical craftsmanship related texts, such as gemology, so about gems, and then also about perfume making. To some, you can probably call it cosmetics. We have also text on cooking. We have also a lot of discussions in Ayurvedas or Ayurvedic text about nutrients and diets. And also we have, not to some extent, scientific literature. So basic fundamental sciences. We have medicine, we have astronomy, we have mathematics. I already mentioned cognitive aspect of yoga and psychological aspect of that. The same way we have also works on town planning. Maybe it is not like planning of a big city like New York or London, but in smaller scale, they were very much conscious about where to put gardens, where to put palaces, and so on. And then we have art and architecture, and so on. Then also we have material culture. We have a lot of manuscript resources which contain even paintings. I was just yesterday I was looking and checking one manuscript of Manthana Bhairava Tantra, and it comes from 12th century with beautiful book cover. So beautiful.
So, Divakarji, so it seems as though there's a vast amount,
Yeah,
and what you're
really
saying is
vast.
that it goes well beyond the religious texts that we're so familiar with. And so, could I just go on a little bit to the preservation of this literature? So, Sanskrit was largely an oral tradition. So, was the fact that these texts were then eventually written down and documented, was that a sign of harder times in ancient India, or and did we lose quite a bit because of that oral tradition?
Uh, Yes. First of all, oral tradition so is this idea of orality that is very much true for very early period. Let's say second millennium BC, around that time. But soon there was invention of writing system, and then Indian writing system. So that probably it started already in the first millennium, mid of first millennium BC.
Right.
Then it was a new tool, so they soon adopted. So earlier they wonderfully preserved. Probably there was tension and there was some sort of constraint of orality, and they had to develop a lot of mnemonic techniques and other things. And their focus was very much in composition and preservation of these literary and poetic things, let's say the Vedic hymns. But soon, probably I would say that the writing system helped them largely, and then they were able to analyze, explain, and speculate and reflect on these texts. So probably when we come to Brahmanas and Upanishads, there is already some sort of probably they are coming closer to writing system. Sometimes during canonization it happened, or there was already writing system before Ashoka, and we do not know that. I can't tell, but can speculate that some sort of recording and writing that should have started very soon, or probably about the time of Buddha or Panini, all this started. But that was probably the first millennium BC. And after that, there was fully developed writing system, and also that led from this analysis and then speculation, reflection. Then and already they had a lot of deliberation, so which started in this period, that further developed, and we had scrutiny and interrogation, systematization of debate, philosophies,
So let's
and then
explore
they
that,
had.
Divakarji, this idea of interrogation and scrutiny. Was there a system for this in ancient India, and how did that happen?
Yeah, no, but that we can see when we are very much early in this Upanishadic period. We
Yeah.
see that there are these so-called Brahmodyas, debate on the high principle. So probably you have read about like Yajnavalkya in the court of Janaka, and he is engaged with other people challenging him, and then he has to interpret certain ritual realities in a esoteric way or in a philosophical way. So this kind of thing we see, but the actual systematic that I said, systematization and then systematic engagement and interrogation, that we see in early centuries of common era. I can immediately remember like Basubandhu, Dharmakirti. These are Buddhist scholars. And then on the other hand, from Brahmanical side, we have Bhartrihari, Kumarila. We have other Nyaya scholars, like, so there one idea develops in among Brahmanas, so in the Brahmanical school, and then that is challenged, or that is criticized or critically appraised by the Buddhist. And then again, so on the Brahmanical side, the let's say Nyaya side or Mimamsa side, they are refining their writing, they're refining their doctrines, and then again they are sending it back to the Buddhists. So then like in case of Kumarila and Dharmakirti first wrote Pramana Vartika, and then the Kumarila criticized his views in his Sloka Vartika. Then Dharmakirti had to write Pramana Vinishchaya, so incorporating their criticisms and then answering them. The same way, Kumarila, after Pramana Vinishchaya, we know there are a few citations that he had written another bulky book developing further from Slokavartika, which was called Brihat Tika, but that is lost. So we have such examples in the first half of first millennium of Common Era.
So this is incredible. So what you're saying is that these texts were not only just written, but they were constantly being interrogated. This exchange was happening not only between internally, but even externally as well.
Yeah,
and that's fascinating. So what about today? So now you academically explore these Sanskrit texts. Could you tell us how does that differ to how some of our modern day rishis or even ancient rishis like Shankaracharya may have explored these texts?
Yeah, but it's critical, and if we start from that scenario in 5th, 6th century, so they were having rigorous engagement and they were helping each other to develop. But somehow, unfortunately, for some reason, that stopped soon after, and focus shifted more to theology. I would say earlier there was debate between like Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Sankhya, and Buddhist. It was multidimensional and on more fundamental and important issues. But at some point, I don't know how and why, there can be certain different answers, but it happened. So this thing shifted uh, uh, to more like theological debate. So soon after Shankaracharya, or about the time of Shankaracharya, we have debate on basically on Vedanta, different types of Vedanta. Even the Nyaya scholars, so they have to engage on the topic of Vedanta. Like the world view, dualistic world view is better, or non-dualistic world view is better. So we became more and more probably spiritual. That might be one of the reasons. That's why we stopped discussing and thinking on other dialectics and debatable issues. So focus probably became one-sided. So that is one thing. And in modern times, I would say people have different liking, different orientation. So, but it can be in a way unfortunate. I can say that Indology, let's say Indology, Indian studies or Sanskrit studies, these are synonyms. So Indology is seen either simply as part of a study of Hindu, Buddhist, or Jaina religion. So particularly it is so in South Asia, and even in the modern world, like in Oxford, in master level, the course we offer is MPhil in classical Indian religion. So it is much more religion oriented. It's not multidimensional. And also it is maybe we have the constraint of resources. We cannot have multiple degrees. So we have to offer one degree, and then we have to focus on religion. So, and then on the other hand, there are other Western scholars. I'm not blaming them, but they already, there are enough of them who come up with certain modern theory, modern idea, let's say anthropology or some other things, micro or macro theory. And on the basis of that theory, they try to understand. So on the basis of secondary sources, without not caring much for critical understanding of primary text, or even they engage with critical understanding of primary text, they start with their theory, their one way or the other way. So this is somehow unfortunate. I would say, from my point of view, I would say, let Sanskrit words speak. Now, already in the 2nd century BC, Patanjali was saying, Shabda Pramanaka Vayam, Yat Sabda Aha, Tad Asmakam Pramanam. So, what he says is, the words are our authority. So, what words say, that we believe. So let Sanskrit words speak. Read them, engage with them philologically. So philosophy or theory should not come first. Philology should come first. So that would be my take. But
So I suppose, yeah,
situation is difficult.
This is where it starts to come into why we should engage with these Sanskrit texts in Sanskrit as opposed to any other language.
Now, that is to some extent true, but that again will be one-sided. Sanskrit text in Sanskrit, so Sanskrit has its beauty, to feel the beauty, to enjoy it, celebrate it, that is needed. But we also need to explain it in another language to bigger public. But what I am saying is we should not start with another, no, how I would say, prejudice in a way, for already saying that like Marxism is right, or this is just randomly I'm saying, no? Or so you have a certain framework of a theory, and there through that framework, with that perspective, you read a Sanskrit text. So my point is, read a Sanskrit text as it is,
with an open mind.
so probably you have better chance that you even can probably contribute in a way, and you can have new humanities, new theory on your own. So why you should start with one or the other framework?
That's interesting, Diwakarji. So at this point in the discussion, I just wanted to shout out to the audience that we're welcoming your questions and answers on the YouTube chat, and we'll be picking up on some of these questions towards the end of our discussion. So please do populate that, and we'll be trying to ask Diwakarji as many of your questions as we can. So Diwakarji, I wanted to go on to now in terms of the modern applicability of these texts, because this is the titular aim of the discussion. So you could describe Sanskrit texts as maybe like a time capsule of the culture of ancient India. So what can we learn about history from these texts, or even how we view history?
Yeah, so we can look at them from a different angle, so different perspective. So there, as you said, it is a time capsule, and it can represent different time periods. So there, we can see Sanskrit is in relation with others, no, with other culture. Sanskrit culture is in relation with other culture, and then there is multiplicity internally. There is cultural transfer is there is cultural exchange is there is influence, mutual influence is there is receptivity, there is sustainability, no? So there is inclusivity is there are simplex as well as complex realities are there. So also at this point I remember in early period, let's say, we see that these days probably people are not much aware of that. That's why I want to tell, in the 6th century, Baraha Mihira, he is receiving like Greco-Roman astronomy and astrology and narrating that, or making Sanskrit astronomical, astrological literature richer. So the same way, because you said time capsule, so I can think like normally people think from modern perspective that everything modern is liberal. No? So earlier everything was orthodox, rigid, and we become more and more liberal and so on. But when we read Sanskrit materials, this is not that simple. So let's say when the society is simple in early period, our dharma shastras were very much liberal, very much flexible. They were not rigid and orthodox. But when we come towards medieval period, it is so. So, for example, when we go to Dharma Sutras, there about like remarriage, widow marriage, there is very much flexibility is there. No? So we can see such thing. Again, another surprising thing I can tell you that normally people say that Hindu Dharma Shastras are not discriminatory, and they are like discriminating people in the lower hierarchy and so on. But on certain issues, there is more freedom given to people in lower in the hierarchy. Let's say again about remarriage, like a Brahmin widow or a Brahmin lady who is young and his husband disappears, then she has to wait extra years than people from other lower hierarchy. So these kind of complex realities we can see. And then also again, as I said, it depends on your approach, and then your which perspective you have, which dimension you are touching. So there, also let's say these days we are very much motivated by European idea of history, which is very much time and space conscious. But when we go to Sanskrit materials, like in Mahabharata, they talk a lot about itihasa, no? So past accounts, and then they are for them time was not that much limited, and then they are event oriented, I would say, lesson oriented, rational or moral oriented, and episodic concept of history we can see there, like we can develop so on such idea. So it is just one example. Like there in Mahabharata, I remember Krishna tells Bhima 16 different dynasties which somehow ruined themselves because of infight. So then in number of places, so like the interlocutor says, at this point, I tell you one past itihasa, so past account. And then they remember the account, they remember the event, what happened, and then what is the lesson. No, this is, I think, wonderful. No? So we do not need to be always time and place conscious. So this
Right.
is just one example.
So it's not about really focusing on those necessary details in this instance. Can we move this discussion on to the modern relevance of Sanskrit then, or Sanskrit literature? So how can this literature be applicable to modern Britain? Were these Sanskrit texts only important for the time that they were written, or are they applicable today as well?
No, but yeah, again, but you can observe. No, so you always, it is important to know no, distinct cultural heritage of societies, and then how societies evolved or how they eventually collapsed. No, and not only about India, around the globe, and how people in different cultures, in different ages, they advanced in their knowledge and technologies. No, so or what were their constraints. So that's why it is important to study all kinds of classical texts, read them carefully and learn from them. So Sanskrit is also that way very much important to understand, I would say, not only India and Indians, but to understand Asia and Asians. So for example, so the Asian mindset is very much dictated by their belief in rebirth and karma, no? So like that, when we compare it with Western mindset. So this is just again one example, and their relation with other civilizations. So even to understand China, Japan, so other Buddhist countries, Buddhist civilizations. I'm not saying that Chinese civilization is Indian, but partially it is Indian. There is Indian input, So even to understand other Asian cultures, Sanskrit is that way needed. And then but that doesn't mean that Sanskrit only is important. Probably Tamil is also equally important, all classical corpus. So that's why I'm saying that. So there is a spirit of Sanskritic culture, and then that definitely helps the modern world. So I can cite like mutual respect. So we can see that in Indian culture, nothing is denied. So like it is not monotheistic or believing in just if you believe in one, you cannot believe in another. So like what is these days Western societies or cultured world is adopting plurality, and then also to some extent I would say that there is beauty and truth also in hierarchy. So when it becomes rigid and caste system, there is negativity. But when there is this accommodating spirit, inclusive spirit, uh, even the hierarchy, you can see that in India, in Japan, in China. So that has a good aspect also. So in the modern world can learn even from that, which they normally see as negative. And also in Indian context, so this in a way nothing is denied. What is denied is egoistic, uncritical claim or extremism. So that can be one thing. And another thing is somehow in modern global context, uh, every identity, let's say Indianness, so Indian spirit. So that is very important, and entire world can learn from that. The same way, Indian religiosity, and not about religion, but Indian religiosity is different.
So this
Like
is the concept of how we view religion, is it?
yeah, I mean, going in depth, religion is not like being Hindu, is not to worship Shiva or Vishnu or Krishna. Actually, to cultivate the qualities of Shiva, qualities of Vishnu, so that is the main. So, like earlier, we have the concept that one can engage with divine being by being oneself divine. And actually the Jainas, they worship Mahavira as a role model, not as a deity, as a god. So like that. So the core of our religiosity, the being religious, practicing religion, is for the sake of self-actualization. So how to cultivate divinity in human life. So from that, the world can learn.
Fascinating.
So,
So,
but unfortunately, again, even in India, even in Indian communities, this spirit is forgotten, and then we are outwardly religious.
of
Yeah.
course, of course. So, Diwakarji, before I move on to audience Q&A, because there's lots of questions that have come in, I just had one final question. So how can British society, how could British society engage with Sanskrit and Sanskrit text better?
Yeah, I would say that we should engage with Sanskrit by way of, actually, I already said that in multidisciplinary and multidimensional academic engagement. It is difficult, I know. I mean, we have limited resources, but if community comes together, it's possible. We have to reinvent and start to appreciate Sanskrit corpus, Sanskritic material. So let's say if we can have Greek and Latin opera and dramas, then why should not have it Sanskrit and Prakrit dramas and operas? So we should develop. Maybe to some extent it's happening. So we should focus there. Then also, like, we have to transfer our cultural knowledge to younger next generation. Somehow Vichar Manthan is doing that, but in other ways also we can do that. Let's say in this context, I propose that we all together as a community, it would be wonderful if we come forward to set up a Sanskrit Tech Society or Samskrita Bharati Sadanam, so, in Europe also, as a platform to have exchange between specialists and communities. I'm not saying that somehow there should be another Vichar Manthan. So Vichar Manthan is doing this already, but suppose beyond Vichar Manthan, we can extend a lot of other things. So the same way, we have to have some sort of global initiative to facilitate dissemination or appreciation of Sanskrit corpus. So by way of translation, analysis, academic engagement. And earlier, informally, when we were talking, somebody from India or third world who wants to come and study in Oxford, he has to pay 22 or to 24,000 pounds. So let's, if possible, let's somehow create some scholarships and so on. So anyway, so by way of translation, by way of reinvention, by way of institutionalization, in multiple ways, we can do that, and we should do that, and we should own Sanskrit in that way.
Thank you, Diwakarji. I'm going to move on to some questions from the audience. So I've got one question from Navalkantji Brinja, and he's asked, in relation to what you've just said, how can Sanskrit be used to rekindle the link with India's ancient tradition of philosophy and science that's been lost?
Yeah, no, but that I said, there is still interest. Interest is rising. So sometimes we have probably better minds in one area, sometimes in another area. But if we can make it more appealing, we can modernize it. We can have multidimensional engagement, and then in conjunction with modern sciences, let us say. We have Vastusastras, so we engage, we have a research program, or somehow we engage with engineers, and then designers. The same way we have Ayurvedas. Earlier I said there are a lot of descriptions of nutrients, diets, combination, composition. So maybe we can work with microbiologist or pharmacist and so on. So that way probably its horizon will be wider, and then there will be more appeal.
So there's one question from Brother Betker. So he's asking, what exactly is Sanskritic Sanskritic culture? Is that different to Vedic culture or Hindu culture?
No, but I'm saying that Sanskritic culture in a way is wider. So these days, probably Vedic is, the term Vedic is even misused in a way. So even you have a certain probably products, like Mahesh Yogi or Baba Ramdev has one or the other product, and that is labeled as Vedic. But when I am academically saying Vedic, Vedic is ancient, so BC, that period. And then based on the Vedic materials, we have Brahmanical, Smarta, other further development. And then even in modern period, what I am saying is by Sanskritic is Sanskritic can cover Vedic as well as classical Sanskrit, and also even Sanskrit in diglossia, I would say, modern languages. And also there is not only Hinduism, a lot of and wonderful literature in Buddhist fold, Jaina fold, so and so on. So Sanskritic culture can cover all. So in a way, so the synonym of Sanskritic can be Indic. So if you are, or
Right.
culturally Indian.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I have another question from BK Gurtu. Where did Sanskrit originate from? It's
No,
a tough one, I imagine.
okay, from the mouth of Brahmins. Sorry. So I'm joking, but so actually, Sanskrit is speech. So to some extent, it's true that we cannot easily pinpoint and say that it started in this area or that area. Why it is difficult is like people are moving from one place to another. Like I am from Nepal, so when I was investigating uh, proto history or early history of Nepal, I found that the early material, we have account of Nipa Vamsa. So from Nipa we have Nepal derived, as Bengal is derived from Banga. So Nipa, the Nipas were early in southern Punjab, Dakshina Panchala. But now you know where is Nepal. So like where Nepali culture originated, we can't tell. So they are migrating, they are moving from one place to another. The same way, like Megasthenes is talking about certain tribes or certain groups in the south, but now they are near Pakistan Afghanistan border. So that's why people are moving from different directions. So in this context, I can tell that early Sanskritic culture was wider. So like, let's say present day Iran, or like certainly present day Pakistan, Afghanistan, Burma, Myanmar, Thailand. So in all these areas, we see that there was influence of Sanskrit. So we have also a lot of Sanskrit inscriptions and materials from Cambodia, Vietnam, in all these areas, as far east as there, and then as far west as Iran. So and so from that point of view, it is very difficult. But it was wider. Now, in cultural context, we can say that again India is widening its influence, or Sanskrit is being global in a way. But politically, probably India got fragmented, Indian cultural sphere got shrunken. So that is another issue. So, but when we go to actual Sanskrit text, or if we go to early Sanskrit text, we have descriptions like in Manusmriti that in the present day Punjab, like Sindh, this side of Indus River. So these are regarded as the best or the heartland of Aryan culture, so Aryan speakers. But a little later, what happens is northern India, present day northern India, becomes the heartland of Indian culture, Sanskritic culture. And then in Manusmriti itself, we see that which was a heartland earlier, like Sindhu Saubira by the bank of Indus River. Certain areas now are regarded as a bad area where Brahmins or the cultured people should not go. So that's why it's difficult. So that's why I'm saying that this geographical or history in time scale, history in geographical way, and inside, outside. So that is very much difficult. And I would say it is very much Western concept.
So on Western concept, do you think that another question from Gaurang Bhatt? So in modern society, do you think we should be studying Sanskrit texts and giving them the same emphasis as other classical literature like Latin?
Yeah, definitely. In terms of influence, probably now Sanskrit is more alive and more influential than Latin. So probably Latin is still practiced in Vatican, or actually also in Oxford, minimally. Like when we have grace in colleges, in college dinners, and then when we have ceremonies, so Latin, a little bit of Latin is used, or oratio. But Sanskrit is still, as I said, Sanskrit is still alive. We have poems, dramas, they are composed. And actually, when I go to South India, I use Sanskrit to communicate with scholars there in South India. Those Sanskrit scholars who cannot speak any North Indian language, Hindi or Nepali, or nor English, then Sanskrit still works as a lingua franca. So I would say we there is even maybe I am too ambitious to some extent, but like Hebrew is revived to some extent, probably even Sanskrit can be revived to some extent, and already it is probably in wider scale than many other classical languages.
So another question here. I think this will be the last question before we move on to the closing remarks from Krishna Adhikari. Is asking, what is the contribution of scholars and people beyond India? So I assume he's asking outside of India in the development of Sanskrit in its various forms.
Yeah. So as I'm interpreting Sanskrit and Sanskritic culture, so there, as I earlier also hinted, there is like this we call Old Persian, but if you read, that is very close to Sanskrit. So it is to some extent it is some sort of Prakrit, some sort of from early Vedic Sanskrit like language. We have Old Persian derived. So there is literature, there is material in that Indo-Iranian context and areas. The same way, we have a lot of writings, as earlier I said, inscriptions from Cambodia, Vietnam, and so on. And then in terms of idea, culture, and concept, a lot of commentaries are written in China. I mean, not in Sanskrit, but Sanskrit texts are commented in Chinese and so on. So that way, we have a lot actually. And in modern days, there are also a lot of Western scholars so who actually breathe Sanskrit, and maybe comparatively we can say that they probably live Sanskrit and then can analyze and contribute to Sanskritic culture more than just a common scholar in India.
Fascinating. So, Diwakarji, I think let's move on to your closing remarks. I think we've had some amazing questions and some amazing answers. So, for your closing remarks, in light of Dharma and sustainability, what do you envisage will be the most important contribution of Sanskrit literature will have to British society?
Yeah, but actually, earlier also we touched on this point, but let me somehow repeat it to some extent, otherwise tell further that we have to learn classical text, we have to learn different societies and then their achievements. In that context, when we read Sanskrit text, we engage with Sanskrit language. Sanskrit corpus reminds us of inclusivism, earlier also I said, pluralism, flexibility, rationality, and then the same way in modern context, we can think of care for some nature and environment, peace, balance of sacred and profane in life, balance in our thinking. They also ask us for skillful, mindful, and equanimous actions. They ask us for believe in our role in cosmic process of ever going becoming, like that is the Vedic notion that we support the cosmic entities, the gods and others, and then they support us. So these kind of like ideas are there. Beyond that, we also have small wonders, like small pleasures, practical things, scattered jewels are there. Like earlier I said, certain know-hows, certain small ideas, but we need to see them, we need to reinvent them, and also just like techniques and technologies are not everything. So we need to engage with human being, human societies, human psychology. So there Sanskrit culture can contribute a lot. So somehow it is very important that if it is possible, we have to have wider academic engagement. We have to reinvent ancient teachings, so ancient wisdom for modern times, and that's all. Yeah, but maybe I can add that, but we should not exaggerate Sanskrit culture or Sanskrit knowledge. That some people naively say that probably in Sanskrit our technology, people are actually not focusing on Sanskrit but on technologies, and they think that Sanskrit texts contain technology for new rocket. So this would be exaggeration. So we should be so. And also, maybe I can add that everything ancient is not good, and everything modern is also not good. So we have to have this judgment and then a rational approach towards it.
Thank you very much, Diwakarji. So today we've explored several aspects of Sanskrit literature and what it encompasses. We've attempted to look at it from a really broad perspective. Explore what we can learn about history and the way history is told, but also expand on how these concepts and ideas can be relevant to modern society. I very much look forward to a central place like Diwakarji has suggested, where we can come together and explore and propagate the good ideas that come from Sanskrit literature. Maybe even in the future, we can put on a Sanskrit drama like you've suggested. So this was our very last fireside of the year. And it has been an incredible year for Vichar Manthan. Now, if you're getting bored over Christmas, you can watch the reruns of any of our 37 VMs and firesides that have taken place this year on YouTube, or visit our website. Now, on the website, we have a plethora of other content to explore, including papers related to the most intricate manthans that have taken place. Vichar Manthan will be back on Saturday, the 9th of January, 2021, exploring, is decentralized finance the future of money? And I think this fireside will look at whether our traditional banks will stand the test of time against the likes of cryptocurrencies. Finally, on behalf of the whole Vichar Manthan team, we wish you a happy new year and see you all in 2021. Namaste.